Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film Road to Utopia from 1946. This is continuing my quest to review all of the Road to movies starring Bing Crosby, Bob Hope, and Dorothy Lamour, and this is the fourth film in the Road to series. After the huge success of Road to Morocco, Road to Utopia took a while to come out. Now, there's not an exact reason. There seems to be a lot of reasons. One is that Road to Morocco was simply just making too much money for them to want to put out another movie. They just wanted to keep collecting money on Road to Morocco, even though this film was actually finished in 1944, March of 1944. And another reason is that Bing Crosby's film Going My Way, which would eventually win him the Best Actor Oscar, came out in 1945, and they didn't feel like having a Road to picture out at that time would necessarily help his Oscar campaign, so they delayed it again. Another reason, I think, is that World War II was still going on, and a lot of the GIs kept watching Road to Morocco over and over again. So to introduce another Road to movie might be hard for distribution's sake, so releasing it after World War II, and this is the first Road to picture to come out after World War II had ended, probably made a lot more sense, frankly. I don't know if they necessarily were like holding it to wait for the war to end, but I'm sure that probably was an added bonus that most of the boys were home. I think all of them, most of them. I'm not exactly sure. But this is their bigger budget sequel. They had a massive hit. Their first of the series to get nominated for Best Original Screenplay. This was the other film nominated for Best Original Screenplay. Bing Crosby was a bigger star. Bob Hope was a bigger star. Dorothy Lamour was a bigger star. The whole series was a bigger star, really, and the studio treated it well. This has probably the biggest budget of Road to series I've seen thus far. And to continue the success they're already having, this was a very popular series. This is probably their most sequel-y in a way, but it's also the most different. It's the only one where they go to a cold temperature. It's the only one that's not Road to a particular actual city or place. It's just Utopia, even though they're actually going to the Yukon, but I guess Road to Yukon or Road to the Yukon probably didn't sound as cool. And it's kind of an odd entry, especially the kind of movie it is, its direction, and how it's very much a post-Road to Morocco movie, but doesn't entirely rip it off. It's almost like mixing Road to Zanzibar and Road to Morocco, still making a very funny, entertaining film, and probably one of the better of the Road to series, or at least that I've seen thus far. It's interesting how many different ideas they brought to it after a well-established series that had well-established rules. It almost feels like they wanted to go in a different direction, and although this definitely works, it's kind of odd and interesting that they would still be kind of developing the ideas, even though they had definitely hit a winning formula with the last film. Duke and Chester, Duke being Bing Crosby and Chester being Bob Hope, and they're a vaudeville act in the early 1900s, and they're doing vaudeville and everything's going great, and then these two murderers come into town and actually get on the boat that they're going to go to Alaska, even though originally Bob Hope, of course, does not want to go to Alaska, but Bing Crosby, of course, tricks him into it. They have a lot of money from their vaudeville act and their scams to get money, but of course Bob Hope accidentally throws the money out of a porthole that he thinks is a safe, which is, a common mistake, I guess. And then, of course, then they have to help clean up on the boat to pay for their ticket and do housekeeping. While they're doing the housekeeping, they find the map from the murderous guys who interrupted their vaudeville show earlier, and find a map to a gold mine that's worth $3 million. So they steal the map, tie up these two murderers somehow, and steal their beards. I'm not exactly sure how they did that, but they don't show that, so whatever. They find a way to get off the ship and pretend to be these guys and hopefully use the map. And since most people believe they're these guys, and Dorothy Lamour is trying to get the map back from these guys, starts to try to seduce Hope and Crosby to hopefully let them get her map and get the gold mine that she is rightfully after, as well as everyone else in Alaska, as Bob Hope and Bing Crosby have to survive before the guys whose identities they stole come after them, and so they can eventually get to this gold mine and collect their $3 million. One of the things that kind of surprised me about Road to Utopia versus kind of Road to Morocco is Road to Morocco has so much fourth wall breaking, and that's like such a big deal with Road to Morocco. That's its big claim to fame. It's the first Hollywood film to really break the fourth wall. And this film doesn't really do it as much. Now, especially Bob Hope and Bing Crosby, they do it a little bit, and they definitely do gags that are called back to Road to Morocco. That might be because this is written by, instead of Frank Butler and Don Hartman, is instead written by Melvin Frank and Norman Panama. It's interesting that this film's written by two different writers, since the previous two had written the first three movies. So it's sometimes interesting that they'll just change things up in this series completely. I'm not exactly sure sure why, if that was a power move or those other writers simply were just busy or didn't want to come back. I don't know. It kind of feels more like a satire of the time than the fourth wall breaking thing that I was at least used to from the series. They do have this guy who comes on at the beginning of the movie, or the picture, or whatever, Robert Benchley, who says he works for the studio and he's going to be popping in throughout the picture to fill in any narrative holes in the movie. That idea of him filling in narrative holes goes away rather quickly within the film, but then he just is adding various jokes and commentary throughout the movie, which was odd. He's like the only real fourth wall breaking thing. It's almost like they made this movie and went, well, maybe we don't have enough breaking the fourth wall kind of stuff, so they put him in. I'm not exactly sure. Since this was shot in advance of its actual release by quite a bit, 19 months in fact, Robert Benchley actually died before this film came out. It's so odd that they shot this so long before. Actually, Hal Walker, this is his directorial debut, but actually came out after 2 other movies he had already directed. So this came out as like his 3rd movie, but it's actually his first. He had like 3 movies come out in 45 to 46. It's kind of odd, you know, he was actually hired because he was an assistant director, an uncredited assistant director on Road to Zanzibar and Road to Morocco, actually also nominated in the now defunct Oscar category of Best Assistant Director. He didn't win though. It's kind of interesting they changed it up so much. They don't have the director of Road to Morocco, they don't have the writers of Road to Morocco and the writers of the road movies thus far. And it does definitely have a different feel to it. It feels more like a normal kind of Hollywood satire. There's not as much breaking the fourth wall. There is a lot of zaniness, but it almost doesn't feel as zany. Road to Utopia is actually really good. I think it's probably better than Zanzibar and Singapore. Maybe not as good as Road to Morocco and surprising, but still a really fun, funny comedy. It was really engaging. I really had a great time with it, but it just wasn't the same kind of flavor as Road to Morocco. It felt a lot more safe in a lot of ways, and I wonder why that exactly happened. I mean, it still has like the bears talking instead of the camels in one part, and that's definitely a callback. And also, this is the only Road 2 film not to have the patty cake thing, which I honestly missed. I kept going like, are they gonna do it? Ah, damn it. I'm so used to it now. Give me the patty cake joke, man. So I'm wondering why exactly that was. I really love them talking to the camera. I love the song at the beginning of the film. Richard Benchley definitely makes jokes about it that are more fourth wall breaking, and so I'm kind of almost wondering if that was kind of a save after they had shot it. They went, oh, whoops, we kind of just let the fourth wall standing. We didn't break it too much. Maybe it was too much of a load-bearing wall for them while they're making this movie, but it's more funnier when they break it. They do have certain sections where they're riding in the sled that just feel like odd cutaways, like they meet Santa Claus and they see a mountain and suddenly it becomes Paramount Pictures, which I thought was a really funny gag. And it does kind of have that sense of almost Warner Brothers cartoons or Looney Tunes throughout this film that Road to Morocco honestly had a lot more of. But I still like how their charisma is so great together, the 3 of them, Hope, Crosby, and Lamore, that you almost don't really notice it. I mean, I could honestly see audiences accepting it. It is interesting, the change in Road to Utopia, and I'm wondering why exactly that is. It almost feels like more of a follow-up to Road to Zanzibar than Road to Morocco, or almost kind of a marriage between the two, but more of a Zanzibar influence and less of a Morocco influence. This is still a really good movie. It being so different was surprising, but you get over it because you're having such a good time. This is the only Road 2 film to take place in the past. Most of them take place in present day, or present day at the time they're making that movie at least. It's also the only one going to a cold location. It's the only one saying Road to Utopia, not Road to the Yukon or something like that. So it's a different kind of Road 2 movie in a lot of ways. Obviously, this is a kind of a spoof of Yukon films and definitely plays like that, but it plays more like a more of a straighter spoof kind of satire movie than the previous ones did. It almost plays a little more close to the chest in a lot of ways. I don't know if that's because of Hal Walker. He ended up directing another Road 2 movie and all of the cast approved him. They wanted him. Apparently the cast was a lot more involved creatively in this one than the previous ones. Maybe that's what changed. Maybe they didn't like how Road to Morocco was so random and crazy. And apparently the screenwriters, Melvin Frank and Norman Panama, had to talk to each of the stars of this film and reassure them that each of them had more screen time than the others. Sounds like the egos were flying a lot more in this film. Maybe it's because they knew they were becoming bigger stars and the series was becoming bigger. Their chemistry has always been fully formed. When it has the 3 of them together, I just think it works so well. But Bob Hope and Bing Crosby are really great. I think that all the songs are great. Dorothy Lamour has a song in this as well, and she has a great singing voice. A lot of people, when they talk about these films, talk about Hope and Crosby, but she's really like kind of the glue that sticks these movies together. She plays more of the straight man in a lot of this, more than those two do. Without her, I don't think these movies would be as funny, and she's gorgeous and beautiful, and I like her songs. Bing Crosby has a lot of great songs in this film as well. I mean, he always has some great tunes. I like his more fun tunes than his slower ballads. That might make me sound immature or something, but I prefer them to the other stuff. But I know notice he's a lot funnier in this film. With him and Bob Hope, it's almost like which one of them actually is the straight man. I don't think there is one. I like how funny they are and their charisma is so ready. It almost feels like they're ready to have fun together. It's really a marvel to watch. This has always been considered, with Road to Morocco, a high point in the series, critically and financially. I think this is probably, to me, the second best, at least now. I haven't seen the ones after Utopia. The thing that makes Road to Morocco so alive, Road to Utopia just simply doesn't have. And it's not a bad movie. It's a wonderful, really funny movie. I know some people actually have a trouble deciding between the two, which one's their favorite. But to me, Road to Morocco, the thing that surprised me is how that movie could have been a film made in the 40s. Like, it felt so alive and fresh and new. Road to Utopia, to me, feels like a film made in the 40s. The fourth wall gags don't feel as radical. It doesn't feel as crazy and wild and, like, over-jokey in a lot of ways. It feels a little more straight. And that doesn't feel as exciting to me, frankly. Now, I still had a great time. I didn't even notice that the fourth wall breaking stuff wasn't happening until I had to go to the bathroom, like, midway through. I went like, oh, it's just Robert Benchley, huh? Like, there's some of it, but there's not a lot, especially after a film that was successful and such a shock to people as Road to Morocco was. And the series was very successful before Road to Morocco, but it just seems interesting that they went this route with Road to Utopia, and this was the follow-up to Road to Morocco. I'm wondering if it was an artistic reason. I can't find an exact reason. It is professionally a lot better directed than Road to Morocco. I mean, technical-wise, it's probably so far the best directed of the Road to movies. Just like, wow, they have this set, like, look at that explosion, look, they can do this. Now, when you're having a huge moneymaker, I'm sure the studio has no problem shelling out even more money for a movie, and this was a big hit as well, but I kind of like that more freewheeling style. Although I think this film made up for it in a lot of ways and still is a really funny comedy, and I wouldn't not recommend this to someone who's like, oh, what are films to see for the road films? If I want to see a Road 2 movie, what's a good one? I would still list this as one of the good ones. I still think it's really good, you know. The only one I wasn't really as into was Road to Singapore, and I think this surpasses that quite a bit. I think Road to Utopia is a great classic Hollywood comedy, but I just don't think it reaches the heights that Morocco did. Now, you could say I'm unfairly comparing past works, but I'm also watching these fairly close together. I'm doing a series about them, but also I've always heard this is as good as Road to Morocco, and I wasn't watching this in comparison. I wasn't going like, Road to Morocco is one of the greatest comedies of all time, show me what you got. I was just kind of like, I've heard this one's a good road movie, and on that level, I think it's really great. I can understand why audiences loved it, because it's a really fun Hope and Crosby and Lamore comedy, and it fulfills on that level very well. It's kind of oddly, interestingly, I posed the question in the Road to Morocco review, I wonder what Road to Morocco would have been like if Victor Schertzinger had lived and had directed Road to Morocco, whereas Road to Utopia almost feels like that kind of a movie. Road to Morocco almost feels like the off movie if you think of it in the context of the series. Road to Utopia almost fits in a little more than Road to Morocco. But to me, that's why Road to Morocco is so amazing, because it's such a breath of fresh air. It's so different. That doesn't necessarily make a movie better, but I think Road to Morocco is funnier and more lively, and that's something I've always loved about it. Road to Utopia doesn't show those qualities to it, but it's still a really funny, amazing studio comedy. It's just a little more conservative and safe about it. And I can think of films that are safer that I still absolutely love, and that doesn't mean it's a worse movie just because of that. But I think I love Road to Morocco more than Road to Utopia, but I still had a hell of a great time at Road to Utopia. And I don't see how you could not have a good time at Road to Utopia. It is an infectiously fun, beautiful comedy. It's the perfection of a comedy team coming back together and making an awesome comedy to please an audience to their funny bone. And Road to Utopia does that in spades, and is probably still one of the great comedies of the classic Hollywood studio era. So if you have seen Road to Utopia and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. And check out my Road to review playlist. It will have all my Road to reviews that I've done thus far in there. You can watch the first 3 Road to reviews within that playlist as well. And if you're watching this much later, probably all the Road to movies, or hopefully at least. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.